Hello everyone and welcome to the most requested game from yesterday's Speed Chess Championship match. It's Nepomniachtchi versus Magnus Carlsen, and this is from the bullet section. We're going to discuss the standings after we check out the game, but this one, it's absolutely incredible. Again, players played an incredible accuracy for a bullet game. So let's see what happened here. Nepo had the white pieces and he opened with pawn to e4. Magnus played knight to f6. We have pawn to e5, challenging Aлекhine's defense with the advancement of the pawn. And now usually knight to d5 is played. And there are over 30,000 games from top tier tournaments where this position has been reached. But Magnus does not play knight to d5, which is officially the only playable move in the position. Magnus goes knight back to g8. And now look at what happens. We have pawn to d4 by Nepo, and now it's basically Magnus, like Magnus is starting from a starting position where Nepo already has three moves in e4, sorry about that, e4, e5, and pawn to d4, and it kind of is in the spirit of the original idea of Alechine's defense, where you want to challenge white's pawns, you want to get them all, for example, d4, e5, c4, f4, and then undermine those pawns later on with some moves like d6 and attacking the pawns with pieces. But knight to g8, that's pushing it a bit too far. If you played this, like if you were in a chess school and your chess teacher saw this, he would probably throw you out of the class and say you should never practice chess again. But when you are at this level, you can obviously play anything. So now pawn to d6. Now it's time to challenge Nepo's advanced center, and knight to f3. We have pawn to c6. There are some games where bishop to g4 is played, but c6 is incredibly rare. The only person to have ever played c6 in this position is Magnus Carlsen himself, but he played it some 10 years ago. In 2014, he played it in a World Blitz Championship, actually against his second Laurent Fressinet, and he won that game. But in that game, Laurent played pawn to h3, but here we have knight to c3 by Nepo, and it is now already, as of move 5, that we have a completely new game. So let's see what the idea is here. Bishop to g4, and bishop to g4 already comes with a very nasty threat. We have bishop to e2 and now knight to d7, kind of forcing Nepo to capture on d6, which is already a small victory for black. You always want to force your opponent to make an unnecessary trade, because if you just castle here, then the threat is already you just capture, and after bishop captures, you win a pawn here. D captures on e5. That's pretty much it. So Nepo has to trade. E captures on d6. We have e captures on d6, and now castles. We have knight g2 f6. Pawn to h3, Magnus trades bishop for knight here, captures, and pawn to d5. And look at already how Magnus's position comes alive from what was once in Alechine's defense. Now he has pawns on light squares, he has very nicely placed knights, and the bishop will nicely complement those pawns on dark squares, as all of the pawns are on light squares. So here, rook e1 check, bishop to e7, and bishop to f4 now. We have knight to f8, not castling right away. Magnus first wants to remaneuver the knight to e6. So knight to f8, we have queen to d3, and now knight to e6. Attacking the bishop on f4, you have to move it bishop to e5, and only now Magnus castles. We have knight to e2, the pawn here isn't all that impressive, and you want to either defend it with c3 or you want to prepare pawn to c4. So the knight really should move and come to g3. Later on you can come to f5 and put pressure on the bishop and on the g7 pawn. So bishop to d6 and now knight to g3. Magnus trades on e5. We have bishop captures, pawn captures, and now knight to d7. Just putting pressure on that pawn, and Nepo goes knight to f5. And it looks like an amazing square for the knight, especially with the pawn being on e5. You can put the knight on d6. The problem is Magnus says that's not really the case. He just plays g6, and now, although it looks like you can play knight to d6, if you play this, Magnus would just capture on e5, and now your knight will be lost, and it also cost you a pawn. So after g6, we have knight to h6, check by Nepo, king g7, and knight back to g4. And again, okay, the knight is excellently placed on g4, so of course Magnus will not allow it to remain there, pawn to h5, and now Nepo has to make a very unpleasant choice. Does he go knight to e3 and allow knight captures on e5, or does he want to play the passive knight to h2 move, which could run into some queen g5 ideas, knight to f4, and already white could be in big trouble. So instead, Nepo goes knight to e3. It's a temporary pawn sacrifice, but Nepo has something other in mind than just winning back his pawn. Knight captures on e5, and now you can't play queen c3. Queen c3 looks like a great move, but d4 just wins the game. There's no defense against this. So Nepo finds knight to f5 check. Now he says, all right, you take my knight, I'm going to capture your knight on e5, and I'm going to mess up your defenses in front of your king. But Magnus, well, he just laughs in his face and he plays king to f6. And now, once you see this, and the king is actually very safe on f6 defending the knight, you know that things have taken a bit of a wrong turn here, and you have no choice but to continue in the same fashion. So as they say, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound, rook captures on e5. So inviting the black king further in, king captures on e5, and now look at this. Shouldn't there be something that you can do to checkmate that black king? After all, the knight is preventing king to d6. So if you could somehow do it, it'd be great. But the problem is after queen to c3 check, king captures on f5, and you could even continue g4 check. Let's say captures. Very nicely controlling all of these squares, but the problem is king g5. And if king g5, even h4 check, you can even give up the bishop here, but you will not be checkmating the black king. There is no mate, the g5 square is guarded, and that's pretty much it. Once you give one more check, the king will come to h6, and the king escapes. So here, after king captures on e5, Nepo goes rook to e1 with check, and okay, you introduce one more attacker into the attack, king back to f6, and now knight to d4. The idea is that if knight captures on d4, then Nepo actually gets to checkmate the black king, because after check, king g5, you're going to play queen to e3 with check, king f6, and queen to e5 will be checkmate. But Magnus, of course, doesn't allow that. He plays a rook to e8, and now not a lot you can do. Although it seems still like a very promising position for Nepo, he does find the absolute best queen to c3. And now, how are you defending this position? You can't really move the king. If you go to the e file, then you will have some problems here. There is only one move that solves the position for Magnus, and it is in fact the only winning move. So feel free to pause the video and win the game for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this incredible solution. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is king to g. I'm only kidding. It is queen to b6. That's the move. So if you found this, you are truly an exceptional player. Big congratulations. The point is that even though Nepo has some very nasty discoveries here towards the black king, there just isn't a good one. And to give you an example, let's say knight captures on e6 check. Looks incredible. You give a check, the knight here is defended, you're preventing the king from going to g7. The king cannot even come to e7 because then you have further discoveries with the knight. But there's always the problem of d4. And this d4 move is... you know, basically black stronghold, and it is the move preventing white from achieving any sort of attack that can be fully realized. And now after knight captures on d4, for example, you will simply trade, rook captures on e1 check, queen captures, and queen captures on d4. You will be up the exchange and of course have a completely winning position. There's no way to continue even, you know, asking questions here. So after queen to b6, Nepo tried rook captures on e6 check, which means he gives up the second exchange. F captures on e6, and now he played queen to e3. Again, there are no good discoveries. If you play knight captures on c6 with check, again d4. And okay, now you can capture back, knight captures on d4, now rook a c8, you attack the queen, and once the queen moves, literally any move is fine, but strongest is pawn to e5, you chase away the knight, once the knight moves, you chase away the bishop, once the bishop moves, you can even play pawn to e3, and it's resigns time. So after f captures on e6, queen to e3 was played, trying to stir some trouble here, maybe with queen to f4, but Magnus, of course, solves that. He plays pawn to e5, and he was in this position on move 28 that Nepomniachtchi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. There are no useful checks. Once you move the knight, Magnus will simply trade here, captures, play pawn to e4. You have two rooks against bishop and knight. Of course, this is completely winning. You can play this however you want to. Of course, Nepo is not interested in that. So after e5, he resigned, and a very, very nice victory for Magnus Carlsen in the bullet section of the Speed Chess Championship quarterfinals. And for those of you who are interested in how, sorry about that, have to fix this a little bit, how the entire match went, well, there you have it. This is how the match went. So the quarterfinal match between Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi. So in the 5+1 section, Magnus was slightly better, 5.5 to 3.5. But then in the 3+1 section, Magnus was even better with 6 to 3. And then in the bullet section, Magnus was much better as he practically destroyed Jan with a score of 9 to 3, leading it to a total score of 20.5 to 9.5. So more than double the points, which is absolutely incredible. As you all know, Jan was a former World Chess Championship challenger, not once but twice. But this is not classical chess. This is blitz and bullet, and you know, it's a much different world here. So yeah, that's the game. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, it's always unbelievable that players can play such moves, you know, in bullet format. So I mean, we can just marvel at that, but what are you going to do? That's why they are chess legends, and why we enjoy watching their games so much. So once again, congratulations to everyone who found that queen to b6 move. It's not an easy move to spot, especially leaving your king here exposed like this, but it is what you have to find, and Magnus found it well, very quickly, pretty much instantly. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't seen my previous video, do check it out. Will be the link in the description below. You have a chance to face Alireza Firouzja if you do really well. So more info will be in my previous video. Do check it out, and maybe you guys will have a chance to play against Alireza and maybe even defeat him, and maybe even have your game featured on this channel. Even if you lose very nicely. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, once again, hope you enjoy it. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Matt Mate, and I would like to thank Lucas Robinson, Florian Fogel, Carmen Polifronio, and Kim Dolman for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and everything that happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.